everyone, and welcome to the Categorically Romance podcast. My name is Bree, and today I am joined by friend of the podcast, like fan favorite, Nan Reinhardt is here. Nan, first off, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Bree. I'm delighted to be here.
So happy to be chatting with you. And I mean, we already shared it, but like it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day.
And to you and to everyone out there who's a mom or has a mom or moms someone.
Yeah. And I will link it in the show notes, but I mean, I always reference your blog because I just love the fact that you update your blog so much. And you did, of course, share a Mother's Day post, and you shared a beautiful picture of your mother. You shared a beautiful photo of your son and your grand boy, and your daughter-in-law. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about like mother-daughter relationships. So I guess like, you know, and you lost your mom. You share that in your post. It's been like what, like 35
years. Yeah. She died very young at the age of 60 of a massive sudden heart attack. It was a huge shock to me and my siblings. It was just like suddenly she was gone. And
That's so crazy. Yeah.
that was hard.
I guess as I guess my question is like the longer that time goes, that like the distance between the last time you shared like you actually spent some time with her, and then like 6 months afterwards she's gone. Like,
Yes.
how do you feel about your relationship now? Like, if you look back, are there lessons that you feel like you pick up on now that she taught you once upon a time that you're like, oh, now that I've had so much time since the last time I saw her, this really sticks. Like, I wish I could call her and be like, you were right. Like, I don't know. When you think about your mom and your relationship with her, you know, before you lost her, like, how does it feel? What do you think?
I feel like I know her better now, and I'm more
Yeah.
accepting of her now. My mom was an old hippie. She was born about 20 years too soon. And I mean, if she could have been at Woodstock, she so totally would have been there, but she had 4 little ones at the time, so she couldn't be. And
And a single mom at that.
and a single mom, yeah, a single mom. And so she wasn't, she just was this kind of out there person, and she dressed crazy, and she just was out there. And I, at the time when I was first married and first had my son, I was much more conservative than I am now, if that's the word I want to use. And so it drove me crazy that she was such a free kind of person. And I see now how wonderful that was, that she could be that. And so our relationship was strained for a while. And then when I went out there right before she passed, of course I didn't know she was going to pass, we really talked and had a great time. And I really kind of got to know her as an adult instead of seeing her through the eyes of her daughter. You know what I mean? And so it was a wonderful visit. I just was so happy to be there and be with her, and we had so much fun. We drove from San Francisco down to Carmel, and we just had a terrific time. And I every day I think of her. I know that sounds crazy, and I talk about her a lot, even though she's been gone for 35 years. I think she would just get such a kick out of who I have become, especially since I've been writing, because she believed in me as a writer from the time I was able to hold a pencil. She kept telling me, "You're going to be a writer. You're going to be a writer." And I didn't believe that about it. I mean, I wrote, but I didn't believe I'd ever be published.
Mm-hmm.
And so ever since I've been published, I think of Mom a lot, because I think she would be, first of all, very proud, and second of all, so excited, to be a part. She'd want to be a part of all of it, because that's how she was. So she was just a very unusual character, but she was one of the few people I knew in the world who could just truly love unconditionally. And that's something I think that I learned from her, that you just take people where they're at and be okay with it.
Yeah. Where do you think her free spiritedness came from when you think
Man,
back on it?
I think because her mother repressed her so terribly, that
Okay.
as soon as she got out from underneath her mother's thumb, and then my father's, she just thought, I'm going to be me. And if you don't like Muriel, then you don't have to be with Muriel. But this is who I am. And she did, a lot of people didn't like who she was, but it's okay. They didn't have to.
She liked who she was.
She liked who she was very much. And she was a reader. Oh, my stars, she was a reader. And she read to us. I think I've posted about that before. She read to us all the time until I was 18 years old. She read to us every summer. And so that's where I got my love of language, my love of books, my love of words. That all came from her.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I think that's where I am. I'm like, I feel like sometimes I can be really hard on my mom. And I don't know if it's because I'm the oldest. I mean, she had me when she was 17. So sometimes I feel almost like sister-ish with her. I mean, I very much know that she's my mom, but I feel like sometimes like we don't have certain conversations because it's like maybe she doesn't feel comfortable coming to me because it just feels like it almost feels sisterly sometimes, and I'm like, why
Sure.
are you so hard on her? And I think it's like you said, like I need that moment where it finally clicks for me that like she's a human and she lived a lot of life before you came along.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
You, man, have a new book out.
I
That was
do.
fantastic as usual.
Oh,
Your
bless you.
voice is like so distinct. And I feel like I don't say this very often, but then when it hits so right. Like you're one of those authors that like if you ripped off the cover, within a few chapters you could be like, this is a Nan Reinhardt. Can you talk a little bit about voice? Because I know for me, I have been very slowly writing, but that is the part of it that I struggle the most. I and I think it's because having gotten out of the military in 2019, I still feel like I'm a military police officer like investigating someone, and I'm like,
Yikes.
this is not romantic, it's not swoon worthy. So talk about voice. Can you talk about voice?
I am sure. I actually kind of come at it from a couple of different places. As an editor, first I'm going to talk to you about it as an editor. As an editor, I have learned, as I've learned to be a fiction editor, that voice is so important. It's just so absolutely necessary to leave the author's voice to them because every author has their own distinct voice. And I may or may not like the voice of the author I'm editing, but it's important for me to respect the voice of the author that I'm editing. I never really thought about myself as having a very distinctive voice. I write what I want to write. And the stories are there in my head, and I just dump them out. A lot of times, it's the characters that are telling the story, and I'm just along for the ride. But which makes me sound a little crazy.
No,
But on
no.
the other hand, no one's put me away yet, and they're publishing the book, so something must be working. But I think that voice is just your own personality coming out in your stories. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I've never really thought about myself as being a particularly interesting person. So when people are like, they want to know about me, I'm like, why? But, I'm pretty boring. But the books, I know that the books are not boring. And one of the things that my editor has said to me several times actually is, I love your voice, and I love the fact that there's always something in every book that makes me go, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad,
Okay.
you know. And it isn't that I'm constantly thinking, oh, I want to put something in the book that's going to hit people. It's just more like this is where the story goes. That doesn't make sense, I guess.
It
But no,
does make
maybe it
sense. I was
does.
about to say, like,
You know,
do you remember what the moment that took them by surprise with this book was?
in this book, I think it was when they called her back
Okay.
to come back to Washington.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
wasn't expecting that, but then I was kind of expecting that.
when she realized that this person that she had so much respect for so many years wasn't who she thought she was.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
that she had to go and be in that and kind of be mired in it. And here she had been living this life for the past 6 months or 7 months or so, falling in love and getting back into her town and with her family, and really chilling out about everything that had happened previously in Washington. And now she realizes, this it wasn't her, it was the congresswoman. So this one isn't quite as dramatic as the tornado in the doctor book. We all have our big moments, but and the next book in this series the hero has type 1 diabetes, I'll tell you that. And so that makes for an interesting story between he and the heroine, who is Jazz's sister. And so there's a moment there that, I think when people read it, they're going to go, oh, we weren't expecting that. So I don't know.
We're talking about Home to River's Edge. So this is book 1 in your new Weaver Sisters series. Can you do an overview of the book? I mean, before we get into it?
Well, the Weaver sisters are the triplets whose family owns the marina in River's Edge, my little town on the Ohio River. And Jasmine has been away for, well, essentially for 15 years. She went away to college and then she moved to Washington, D.C. and worked her way up to being the chief of staff for a congresswoman. And then she found out something about the congresswoman that was unsavory. And so she went to her and talked to her about it, and the congresswoman fired her. And so she left. She lost when she went to speak to her boyfriend, who's a lobbyist, about it. He told her she was being a baby and to stop
Yeah.
acting like an idiot.
Oh gosh, that like burned me up.
I know. I was like, you turkey. Anyway, so she sold her condo and she left. And all of her friends there sort of abandoned her, which was, I think, quite startling for her. She wasn't expecting that, but they just ghosted her, everybody. So she came back home, and the first thing she did when she got back home was run into the back of her old boyfriend, literally into his car.
Literally.
Literally.
I was like, this is such a Nan Reinhardt meet cute.
And he's Elias Walker, and he's the head of Walker Construction, his family construction business. And we have met Eli, or we've heard about Eli anyway. In previous books, his family is the construction company in town, and so we've mentioned them now and again. But Elias was engaged to a woman that he was very deeply in love with, and she died right in front of him. Actually, she had an aneurysm, and she died right in front of him. And so he's dealing with grief, and he's sitting on the side of the road trying to work up the courage to go up to the house that he had been building for he and his fiancee Amy. And he hadn't been up there since she died, and he had promised himself he was going to go up there before the end of the year. And it's New Year's Eve, and it's almost dark. And so he's sitting there trying to work up the courage to do it. And she ran into him. She swerved to avoid hitting a deer and ran into the back of his BMW. And she is just outraged. And I had such a good time writing this scene because there he is saying to his, talking to his girlfriend who's dead, or his fiance who's dead, just give me a sign, just send me a sign.
Yeah.
And then his old girlfriend from high school hits him with her car. And he didn't even, at that point, he didn't even realize she was the sign until she handed him. She had a bottle of Jack in the car, and she was so upset and just ranting and raving. And she grabbed the bottle of Jack out of the back of the car and took a big slug of it and then offered it to him. And he thought, oh, Jack, that was Amy's favorite drink. And then it hit him. You're the sign.
You're the sign.
And so he drags her up there with him. And she's like, I have no idea what's going on. And she's completely clueless. But as it turns out, they have a moment up there where they both decide together that they're going to try to fix their lives. Yeah. She tells him what happened to her, and he tells her about Amy dying and how his life has been. And they just decide, let's be friends and let's fix ourselves. And then we'll check back in. Well, as it turned out, they checked back in a lot quicker than 6 months. But anyway, so it's just a story of the two of them getting their lives back together. And as it happens, they belong together to do it.
What made you choose? Because I love, I don't know what this says about me, but I love grief story plots and romance novels. I don't know if it's just, we're all going to experience grief throughout our lives. Yes. So I think in a way it's kind of a hopeful thing. It's like, I know that I'm going to, like, my maternal grandmother, she's my last living grandparent, and she's really going through it right now. And I feel like I'm grieving her loss already, although I'm like, you could totally go before her, kind of thing. But just like thinking about the fact that one day I may not be able to call her, kind of thing. So I think when I read stories like this, like there's hope, even if it's not like super harped on, it's like you do see Elias move on from Amy, like he still grieves her. You can tell he still loves her, but like he has to pick up his life. Yes. What made you choose that route rather than, they were married and they got divorced, or like something totally different? Why'd you choose that for him?
I wanted Eli to be, first of all, I wanted Eli, my beta heroes. I don't write alphas very well. I don't really write them at all. The guy I'm writing right now is the closest to an alpha I've ever come. But anyway, my heroes are all beta heroes. Soft, gentle, sweet old marshmallow guys. And Eli is no exception. And I also wanted the reader to see how much love he's capable of. because he's coming back into Jasmine's life. He broke up with her 3 days before prom when they were seniors in high school. And although, that's long ago and it's history and neither of them are harping on it, it's still, that's her last memory of him is, dumping cheese fries in his lap the next day. So, there's no love lost between the two of them at this point. But I wanted her to see how deeply he's grieving, because it didn't only show her who he was in his heart, but also how capable he is of love. And I hate it when people write someone grieving, but then all of a sudden the new person in their life becomes so much better than the person they're grieving. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted Amy to remain a big part of who Eli is. And so I hope I managed to do that. I hope that throughout the whole book, we saw Eli not comparing Jasmine to Amy, but rather learning that he can love a second time.
Yeah.
And her accepting that Amy was always going to be in her life if she was going to love Eli.
Oh, what you did at the end, I was like, okay, yeah, Jazz totally understands the assignment here.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. That was that took a while for me to sort out how I was going to do that, because I really wanted Amy to be in the end of the book, and I couldn't figure out a way to do it. And then all of a sudden it hit me, okay, now that's how we can do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, you touched on it a little bit ago, but like sometimes it's the characters or like a scene that comes to you. Was it the meet cute between those two that like came to you first? Like when you sat down to write their romance, like what was it first?
Well, it's funny because I started this book twice.
Okay.
The first time I started it, I couldn't move it. The story was there in my head. I knew what I wanted to happen, but I just couldn't get it to move past the first couple chapters. So I sent them to my editor. I said, what is going on here? And she said, I think you need to start more in the action, because I started writing about her coming home. That's where I started, was her driving home. And then the next chapter was him trying to go up to the house. She said, put them together. My editor's brilliant. Sinclair Sonnet, she's the most amazing person in the world. And so she said, just put them together. That's all you have to do. Just put them together. She goes, and bring them right in and have them see each other almost immediately. So I thought, how can I do that? So I just took the scene I had of her driving and had her swerve to miss a deer and run into the back of him. So
because is there a thing as an editor with the start of a book being the character driving? I mean, when you have your character driving, something happens. Either we hit someone or we get pulled over for driving on the wrong side of the road.
Oh yeah, that happened too, didn't it?
Yeah. So yours is like yours is always action, but like I've heard like word on the street is there are editors that are like, don't start your book with the character driving. But then I think of your book and I'm like, when Nan does it, something is about to happen and you're not spending too much time on the fact that they're driving. Like we meet Jazz, she's driving, and then boom, she's ran into the back of her ex-high school sweetheart.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like starting with somebody looking in the mirror. That's a common trope for people to start by, she's standing there looking in the mirror. If it works, man, do it. But both those driving books, just, it was just felt right to do it that way, because it was bringing people to where they were going to meet the person that they're going to be involved with. And so, I actually had them first meeting up at the winery at the party, and it was too late then. And there was nothing to develop. You know what I mean? There was nothing, there's no story to develop up there. The story had to happen with just the two of them.
And that scene is brilliant because
thank you.
They try to play it off like they haven't ran into each other already. And like, this is, we're going to talk small town romance, but like so much that you've already said has like hit on my thoughts of like why small town romance is just so fun, because it's like you mentioned the cheese fries and the whole high school, him leaving her before prom in a small town. People remember that, right?
Oh yeah.
And so like them two walking into this party at the winery, it's like, oh, we see you two walk in not too long apart from one another kind of thing. Like people remember that. So it was just so funny to see them trying to navigate like, oh no, like nothing's happened. We just kind of ran each other and said hi or whatever.
Yeah. Her sisters are very they're all defensive of each other. They really protect each other because they're triplets, and there's a special bond, more than just sisters and siblings, but they're so close to each other. And uh, that was one way, the sisters still being mad at Eli 15 years later. That was one way of showing, that we're going to take care of her. So anyway.
Well, I do love that it is a series about sisters. Why did you want to go the triplets route?
Oh, it's really a dumb reason, but I know some identical triplets. I have some friends, Patty, Paula, and Pam, who are identical triplets, and they've just been so fun to know, and you can see so much of each of them in each other, and it's a really close relationship. Sometimes it's hard. You can see that it is, and other times it's just wonderful, just like any sibling relationship. But I just thought, how fun would it be for these girls to be identical triplets, but not let that be a theme in the stories. Because
I love that like they all wear their hair different, so you can kind of tell them apart because of that.
Yeah. And they all, they at one point in this book they talk about dressing alike for something, and one of them's like, no, we're not doing that. We haven't done that since 5th grade. We're not doing it. But then you also know that one time one of them took a math test for the other because they weren't gonna, and so triplet stuff.
For Jazz, for her profession, like how did that come to you, and like what did you do any kind of research? Because I felt like especially when she goes to the boyfriend and like she's like reaching out to people, she's still in Washington, the way that they all treated her felt so real. Like that fear, or not even necessarily fear, but like we aren't going against this person, felt so real, Nan. So like talk about that part of the book, because even she gets back to River's Edge, she's cozy, she's moving on, but there's always, I mean, I think as a reader it always looms over your head that like she went through something in Washington DC, like this can't be done yet, whether they call her back or like the lady starts popping up all over the news, like we're not done here yet, like it's such a serious thing.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you the truth. One of my favorite TV shows in the whole world is West Wing.
Okay.
I've seen the West Wing. I've seen every episode at least 4 times. And I love the vibe there. That Aaron Sorkin sort of inside the Beltway, kind of vibe. And I knew that I wanted her to be interested in politics. That was just, I don't know, when she talked to me, that's where she was. But I couldn't figure out how I wanted to make her. I didn't want to make her someone like a congressperson or something like that. And so doing the chief of staff thing was, that was something I thought that could be believable. I did a lot of Googling. Oh, my stars. I Googled the socks off everything in Washington. My son he works as a national security analyst. And so he was able to provide me with some insider Washington, just not really anything government wise, just sort of like, well, if you were standing here, this is what you would see. Like when she walks up the steps of the Rayburn building, I didn't know most of the congressional offices were in another building. And, you would see this or you would see that, or, and I, but mostly it was just Googling. That's, I Google everything.
Wow. Yeah.
And I read everything I can find. Right now, the book I'm working on is a book about the guy is Eli's brother, Jack, who's now the head of the company, and the company's having trouble. And so I'm reading about construction and, what happens if they do this, or what happens if a construction company does that. So you'd think I would be brilliant, but unfortunately, none of it stays. Once the book is gone, so's the information.
Yeah. I don't really need this anymore.
Yep, it's gone now. Which, as an editor, that's a good thing, because I used to edit nonfiction, like computer manuals and the For Dummies books. I think I told you that before. And if I never remembered everything I read, my brain would explode. So, I remember little bits and pieces of things, or someone will say a word and I'll go, oh, I read that one too. It doesn't stick. Thank God.
Well, what inspired the romance between Jazz and Eli to be a second chance?
I didn't want to bring a new person in, to be very honest. I didn't want to bring another person in because Jazz was new to us, to the readers. And I thought, what would be believable? who would believe, if two people came right back into town and fell immediately in love? That just didn't work for me.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for her to rediscover Eli felt good. I thought that was all part of the coming home thing. And that was the big theme in this book, I think, more than anything else, is that you can come home and life is going to be different, and the town is going to be different, and your family is going to be different, and everybody and everything is going to be different, but you can come home and be back a part of it. You just have to figure out how. So,
Yeah.
and I thought her starting out at Max was a terrific way for her to
I
get back
loved
into the
that.
town.
I loved it. And it was her idea. She's like, I need a job. He needs help. And next
Yep.
thing we know, she's like serving coffee. I loved it.
Yep.
Are there any difficulties with writing Second Chance for you?
I think the hardest thing about writing Second Chance for anybody really is making sure that the people really actually do deserve a second chance. A lot of times, second chance romance, at least not a lot of times, but some that I've read, I thought, why is she going back to him? And I didn't want anyone to have that feeling about Jasmine and Eli. Eli made a big mistake senior year when he dropped her, and she had every right to be really mad at him. But he was 17.
He was
And
17.
17-year-olds are stupid. And so he did a stupid thing. And the first thing he did practically when they were meeting on the snowy road was apologize for that. And she was like, really? My gosh. So, I think that you have to make sure that it's believable that they would be back together again, and not that, either she's a fool or he is.
Yeah. I mean, we have to be forgiving of 17-year-old boys.
Oh,
Okay.
sure. Yeah. If that had happened when they were 30, then maybe I don't think their relationship would have worked. But she'd been gone a long time, and he'd had this whole other life, and she'd had a whole other life, and they came back as different people.
And I think it's oh gosh, those moments, and especially in that moment where he had just was kind of like was chatting with Amy and like give me a
Yes.
sign of like these two people who dated back in high school and who probably honestly have not thought anything about each other in the last like 15 years, and then
Right.
boom, all of a sudden here we are in the same place, and we realize like there's like still chemistry there. I think it's just, I love those moments. That moment was just them reconnecting, especially as he's asking for a sign. It's like, oh yeah, this is the juice, this is the good stuff.
Yeah. It was really fun, and that little magical thing. I haven't done it in every book, but I'm kind of getting into it. I'm sort of having fun with putting just a little magical thing in,
Yeah.
and just her bringing out the bottle of Jack, and it was it was something only he would look at and go, oh, that's a sign. But and in the next book got a little extra magic in that one. So, and I don't usually write that, but it was fun. It's something different to do.
Well, we were talking before we hit record about it feels like small town romance is having a very much deserved moment. And I was thinking, as I was reading your book, I was like, we hear a lot about authors will say basically like you start a family, keep the series going surrounding the family. And I'm like, Nan's so good at basically doing the same thing, but it's community. Like here we are, we're still in the same town with like family members we read in the last series. And talk, can you do you feel like small town romance is having a moment? And in your case, like how do you know like I'm not done with this community yet? Like what are you having fun about as far as like, I mean, you're exploring families through the community, and you could just literally keep going through that.
You're right, I could, because I love it there. I mean, I realize it's fiction, and my friends who live in small towns are like, there's no.
Look, I
Of course it's
literally
not.
felt like I was at the diner. Like that's how
Oh,
real, like
good.
once you get into your books, it's like I literally felt like I just left the diner. Okay.
That's what we love to hear. And I have so many readers contact me and say, I want to move to River's Edge. I'm like, yeah, I do too. It's a shame it's not real, isn't it? I think it feels like it is because of there's a lot of or there's a couple three brand new small town kind of series on Netflix, Virgin River, and they're doing a new one called Sullivan's Crossing. I'm not sure if that's Netflix is doing it, but I think that people are looking for that feeling of community, as you say, that that coziness, for lack of a better term. And I keep thinking, are there going to be, how many single people can we have in one small town? But on the other hand, I look at shows like, my husband and I are totally hooked on Death in Paradise on BritBox or Acorn. I can't remember which. It's on one of those two British TV stations. And you think it's a little tiny town, San Maria, but there's a death, there's murder every day, every
Yeah.
week. And you don't think, oh, how weird. You just think, oh man, something new. And so I'm hoping that as I keep writing books in this town, people will continue to think, oh, cool. And another story from River's Edge, as opposed to how many single people can there be in one
Yeah.
town. So,
Sarah and I used to joke about that with Cozy Mysteries. She'd be like, how are all these murders happening in these
I,
cozy small towns and nobody's
know,
thinking about like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't so safe.
I know, but look how long Murder, She Wrote
Yeah, yeah.
stayed on the air with, every week Jessica had something new to look at and or something new to explore. And I'm like, I think, truthfully, as long as there are people in my head saying, Nan, write my story, and can we do it in River's Edge, I will.
People
So
just want to stay. They want that coziness and we want to stay.
I
We
think so.
want to stay.
Yeah, I do. I think people do want to stay. And I think because also the secondary characters like Mac and Carly and, they're, and Noah and, the people from the town are in every book pretty much. And people from previous books turn up in new books. So they're like, oh, I wanted to find out what happened with so and so. And look, here they are, like probably in this book that I'm writing now. I don't think Mac and Carly will ever get married, but I think maybe Dot and Noah might.
Okay.
So, I'm thinking, that would be a fun way to end this book. So, I don't know that I'm going to do that, but the point is, these people that keep turning up in every story have a story too, and people are curious and interested.
Mhm.
It's like great.
And I think another part for me that makes it just feel so real is you do capture a lot of like the town and the area itself's like livelihood, like the river, where a lot of the townsfolk, work and operate and all of that. And it's just like you really feel immersed. So is that all stuff that you're like conscious of, or do you just kind of do it without even thinking? Like,
I try really hard not to give everybody on the river, not to make them all attorneys and doctors, because that's not real. But I know that down there on the river, because I've been down there a million times, there's the bookstore, there's a hardware store, there's a diner, there is an attorney, there is an accountant, there's a shipyard down the river a little ways where people work. And that in the book I'm working on now, the construction company lost the bid to build the car factory across the river in Kentucky, but they are trying to get the contract to build the housing that the Japanese car maker wants to build for his workers. So, there's a lot going on even in a small town. And so, people work at Target, people work at the diner, it's just everybody has a job. And, I love like the Little Seams Peaceful quilt store. I love, that was a fun little place to write, and it's going to come into play, I think, in the next book or the book after. I can't remember. But anyway, there's so many little businesses in small towns, and every time I go down to the little town that this town is based on, I see something new, and I think, oh yeah, I want to put that in.
well, we need
Yeah.
you to make more trips to this town so we can keep
I
River's Edge going.
I just did a book signing in there in February, and I had so much fun.
Oh,
It's just the nicest town, and the people are so welcoming, and it was so much fun. So
well, as we are, we're in May, we'll be transitioning to summer soon. Like, how are you? Like, when you're not writing, like, what are you doing to like enjoy the moment, enjoy the season? Like, how are you taking care of yourself when you're not
cool.
in River's Edge?
Well, I don't know if you've read enough of my blog to know that back in December I was diagnosed with heart failure, and so I'm going to the doctor a lot. she's she's working on a 4-drug protocol thing that's supposed to help reprogram my heart, and I'm on them now. I'm not on the full dose of all of them yet because they've got to like ease me into
Ease you
it.
into it, yeah.
But it seems to be helping. I feel stronger. I feel like I can make it through all the way through the day, which I hadn't been. So and I'm not getting breathless as easily. So it feels like it's working. But we opened the lake cottage up just this past weekend on Wednesday and stayed for a few days and did some work up there. And I walk every day with my neighbor, and she and I go to the gym and swim. And pretty soon we'll start swimming in the lake, and we'll get the boat out and play on the water. So we do, Oh, and this is big news. It is our 50th anniversary this year.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. So my mother, who
50
said,
years.
yes, my mother said to me the night before I got married, she said, "Honey, I love you so much. I give this 6 months."
Mom. 50
It's like,
years
thanks, Mom.
later.
50 years later, here we are. It's funny because when I went out to California right before she passed, she said to me, I need to say something to you. And I was like, oh, God help me. What is it? And she said, I was wrong. She said, whatever it is you're doing. At that point, we had been married like 22 or 23 years. And she said, whatever it is you're doing it right. Good for you.
I love that.
And I was, thanks, Mom. So anyway, we have that coming up, and we're going to be, I'm not sure what all the celebration's going to be, but we'll be excited about that. And then in July, I'm going to my publisher, Tule Publishing, Jane Porter, is sponsoring a writer retreat for the Tule authors, and I'm going to go to California, down to near San Clemente.
Oh, you are going to
spend a
love
few
it.
days with the Tule writers, and I'm going to get to meet my editor and all the team that works for us. I'm so excited because it is the most wonderful publishing company and the most wonderful team of people who work on our books. So I'm really excited to meet them. Plus, I work on the team as well. I'm a copy editor, so I get to meet some of the authors I've edited.
That
so
you've edited for, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, Miss Jane P.
She's
She's so
rocks.
great.
She is just. I just adore her. She's so great. And she's just so supportive. It's just wonderful. I couldn't have picked a better place.
Tell me, like, what you've learned about love, about relationships, about marriage in 50 years with 50 someone. Years.
Well, let's see. When I got married, my grandmother, who was well into dementia at that time, said to me two things. What you see is what you get. And if that's not who you want to spend the rest of your life with, do not walk down that aisle.
Oh my God, take note of that. Yes.
And the second thing she said was keep that sense of humor. It's critical.
Yeah. I'm so glad you kept your sense of humor.
She was absolutely right about that as well. And I think the thing that I might add to that is pick your battles. Mm-hmm. Because there are so many things that couples get into such a tizzy about that is just not worth arguing about. It's not worth the relationship. And so the relationship has to come first. And always, always remember that before anything else, you are man and wife. You are a couple, or you're, wife and wife, or husband and husband, whatever you are. The coupleness of you has to be the priority. And even when you're parenting, you have to remember that coupleness is so important, and to hang on to it. Because some people lose themselves in parenting, and it would be so easy to do. We only had one child, and we had times when it was like all about him. I can't imagine having more than one. We tried, we didn't get to have any more than one, but I just can't imagine how hard that would be, and how easy it would be to let the marriage sit on the back burner. And you can't do that. The marriage, the relationship, whatever you call it, that's the number one thing, because you've promised each other that you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And so, and there's going to be times when it sucks and times when it's the most amazing thing on earth. And as long as the most amazing times outweigh the sucks time, you're in pretty good shape.
Outweighs the sucks time. Such a Nan quote. I love it.
That should be on a t-shirt, don't you think?
A tote bag, because we're in our tote bag era.
Oh, that's right. A tote bag.
Well, I want to end off by circling back to something you said in the beginning, since we are like celebrating Mother's Day. You said that you finally you finally got it. You finally understand the woman that your mom was. When did it click for you? What happened?
I think it probably clicked for me when writing became the most important thing, because it was like a little light bulb. Not a light bulb. It was more like Mom pointing at me and saying, I told you so.
I told you. Yeah.
I told you this is what was going to happen. And, it may have taken a long time, but good for you, girlie. And I think that is when I realized she never, ever wanted anything more than the very best for me, or anything less than the very best for me. and how much she loved me.
Yeah.
You know, she believed in me so
She
strongly.
believed in you, Nan.
Yes. And she
Yes.
knew this was going to happen. She knew it. And I never credited her with that until I think it was my second or third book was published. And I was like, oh my God, she was right.
She was right.
It's like, Mom, you're right. You're right. You're always right. You're queen of all you see. So, you know,
Oh man, that free spiritedness is so inspiring because I feel like in today's world as women, I feel like we're just trying, not even necessarily trying, but like you have so many roles. Like you're just
we
expected to
do.
do so many things, and to just hear about
Hmm.
someone, like you said, like probably born like 20 years too early, who just was like unabashedly themselves. It's like, yes, that's the goal. I feel like that's
Yep.
the goal.
Yep. Yep. And, you know, I think we have a tendency to be, women especially have a tendency to be pleasers. And I've been a pleaser my whole life. And I'm learning that, you know, maybe I don't have to please everybody all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can just please me and it'll be okay.
Yes. And on that note, everybody, Nan Reinhardt is a fucking rock star.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. That's the first time anyone's ever referred to me as that. And
What?
thank you.
You're
I am.
welcome. I tell you every time we talk, like you just get cooler and cooler every time we talk.
I love talking to you.
I love talking to you
It's
too.
so much fun.
So you're working on are you currently working on book 2, or is
Oh,
book
no,
2
no.
turned in, you're
It's,
working on book 3?
actually, book 3 is done. They're all turned in.
They're
The Weaver
all
sisters
turned
are
in.
all turned in. They're all on the Tule website and on my website. You can pre-order the second one right now. It comes out August 30th. And the third one comes out, I think it's October 23rd. It's not up for pre-order yet, but I'm actually doing the copy edits on it, right? I'm going through the copy edits. The Tule team just sent it back to me from the copy editor. So I'm doing that right now. And I'm writing book 1 in the next series, which won't come out until like April of 2024, I think. So.
Okay. I don't want Miss Jane P to yell at us, but can you give us any hints about the new series? Anything?
Well, I can tell you that it's Elias's brother and cousins, the Walker family.
Okay.
Jack is his brother, and Cameron and Joey and Annabelle are his cousins. And they're all involved in the Walker construction family business.
Okay, so when you said that, okay, this is the new series.
This
okay.
is the new series.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. The new book is the first book is Jack's book, and he's having a little trouble with the company and he needs some help, and the person who can help him the most is someone he's so attracted to he doesn't want to hire her, but he has to. So
There's some conflict for you there.
little hint.
Well, thank you for hanging out with me on Mother's Day today, sharing your
I had
time
such
with
a
me.
good time.
You'll have to come back. You have a book coming out in August, so
Yep.
we'll set the date.
I would love it. I can't wait for you to read the next book. I'm really excited for you to read it because it's a tiny little bit of magic going on, and it's a little tiny bit different.
And we
So,
all need a little tiny bit of magic right now.
We
So
do.
I can't
We
wait,
do.
man. I just love
Great.
your snarkiness. I love your dialogue, your banter. I'm ready. Listeners, check the
Fabulous.
show notes. You know I will have links to all the places you can keep up with Nan Reinhardt. If you have not read Home to River's Edge, I'll have links to it. Go get your copy, go read it, and be prepared for August. We're in our small town romance era, people.
We
Go
are.
to River's Edge.
I hope everybody does because it's such a great place.